Democrats in Iowa want to take back Terrace Hill this fall. It's just one of the country's governor's seats they hope to flip. We sit down with Washington Governor Jay Inslee, chair of the Democratic Governors Association, on this edition of Iowa Press.
Funding for Iowa Press was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation, the Associated General Contractors of Iowa, the public's partner in building Iowa's highway, bridge, and municipal utility infrastructure.
I'm a dad.
I am a mom.
I'm a kid.
I'm a kid at heart. I'm a banker.
I'm an Iowa banker.
No matter who you are, there is an Iowa banker who is ready to help you get where you want to go. Iowa Bankers, allowing you to discover the genuine difference of Iowa banks.
For decades, Iowa Press has brought you politicians and newsmakers from across Iowa and beyond. Now celebrating more than 40 years of broadcast excellence on statewide Iowa Public Television. This is the Friday, June 29 edition of Iowa Press. Here is David Yepsen.
34 of the 50 states, or more than two-thirds, have Republican governors. Here in Iowa, a Republican has served as governor for 38 of the past 50 years. Iowa Democrats are betting on Fred Hubbell to win back the governor's office this fall, and the party hopes to flip a few other seats across the country. Washington Governor Jay Inslee chairs the Democratic Governors Association, and he's in Iowa working to help flip this one. And he joins us here at the Iowa Press table. Governor, welcome to Iowa and welcome to Iowa Press. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I got to tell you, you got a beautiful state here. You know, I kind of brag about Washington State, but it's great to be in Iowa.
Well, thank you. It's good to have you.
Love your oak trees.
Thank you. Across the table, James Lynch, political reporter for the Gazette, and Radio Iowa News Director Kay Henderson.
Governor, you're here campaigning with and for Democrats. Given what happened here in 2016, where Republicans had a barn burner of a year, what do you see as the prospects in 2018 for Democrats in Iowa?
Most excellent. This is one of the most competitive races in the country. We've got one of the best candidates of either party in Fred Hubbell. And it's not just me saying that. The Cook reports just switched this because of Fred's tremendous abilities, switched it to a toss-up race. So this is what you want in life, which is a competitive race. And we believe, in just in my brief time period, I've picked up the vibrations of Iowans that it seems to me are ripe, looking for change. They are very discontented with the chaos coming out of their party leader. They have an existing incumbent who really has been an enabler of the president's chaotic practices that are really threatening the economy and health of Iowans, both in health care and some of the practices that are hurting the agricultural economy so significantly. So I'm picking up very strong views that this is a time that Iowans are looking for a change, of having someone who wants to maintain dignity and civility. And I think the difference here is, if I can just tell you how I look at it, is that you've got an incumbent who seems to want to focus more on extreme social arguments rather than finding practical solutions. So I think Fred's a great candidate for this moment.
Talking practicalities, you're head of the Democratic Governors Association. How much money will you invest in the Hubbell campaign?
Just enough. It'll be exactly the right amount. We are very committed to this race for a variety of reasons. One, we got a great candidate in Fred. I mean, we were just talking about this. I think he is the perfect candidate, not only for his long-time leadership and so many things in Iowa, but he's a person of civility and dignity, and I think his demeanor is perfect for the moment, because frankly we're in a moment where people are very concerned about the divisiveness and the intolerance that have been fanned by the occupant of the White House, and you have an incumbent who's been an enabler of the White House, which is sort of sad.
So this is a top-tier race for the Democratic Governors Association.
Very much.
Make the case for Fred Hubbell. You've talked about his qualifications. At the same time, if you look at Iowa, the economy is doing well, personal income is growing, unemployment is very low. Why make a change at this point?
Well, a variety of reasons. Number one, you've had a reduction of support of education. We were just at the plumbers and pipe fitters, where they were saying that they're having more difficulty because their people are not getting the education they need, even to enter an apprenticeship program. You've got and Fred is a person who's built businesses and is committed to jobs for everyone, and I love his career-connected learning ideas. In healthcare, you have 600,000 people who are in jeopardy right now because of the incumbents' failure to abide by this commitment to help people in healthcare. This embrace of Donald Trump's effort to essentially disable healthcare is very dangerous.
You've been a very vocal critic of President Trump. People often come to Iowa to sort of test the waters for their own presidential ambitions. Under what circumstances would you run for president in 2020?
You know, I really do believe this. We cannot wait till 2020 to be focused on changing the course of this country. We need to focus on 2018, and I am, and that's as Democratic chair of the Democratic Party. I'm very much committed to electing Democrats. It's important in Iowa, it's important nationally, in part because we need to stop the gerrymandering that has so disabled the U.S. House of Representatives. The Supreme Court took a pass on that, is not going to help end the gerrymandering. So really the only way to do that is elect Democratic governors. We need to elect people who will push back on some of the dangerous and divisive policies coming out of the White House. I mean, most recently, this child separation policy that is so cruel. And I'm glad that Iowa, under your Attorney General, is joining with Washington to go to court to protect not only these children, but the Constitution.
We'll talk about that later. But again, under what circumstances would you run for president?
The right circumstances. Look, I'm just focused on this, and it is a full-time job. And I do believe we will have a candidate who will restore order and some stability. I will tell you the one thing that about 2020 I can say. I am confident we will have a candidate who is committed to the clean energy future that Iowa represents. Iowa is a fountain of clean energy. It has 30,000 people working in clean energy. Jobs are growing 11 times faster in clean energy than they are in the rest of the economy. And that's a very similar experience to my state. So I do want to make sure we have a candidate in 2020 who will promote that vision in an effort to defeat climate change. This can no longer be a back burner, and I'm going to do what I can to make sure that's the case.
With your focus on 2018, is this going to be a referendum on Donald Trump? I mean, Hillary Clinton made it 2016 a referendum on Trump. It worked well, I guess, in Washington, but not so well here in Iowa, where she lost by 9 or 10 points. Is it that simple in 2018?
Well, no, but you have to understand, independents, many Republicans, Democrats, really have had a belly full of the chaos coming out of Washington, D.C. And they understand we need someone who can unite Americans and Iowans around practical solutions rather than divisive ideological battles. And I believe Fred is perfect to seek those solutions. The incumbent right now, I think Iowa needs a guardian against Donald Trump's depredations. They have an enabler of Donald Trump. The incumbent was called the governor of Trump's America by some pundit, and I'm told that's a pretty apt description. She has refused to stand up on these trade policies that could devastate the Iowa economy. She has indulged in the most extreme effort to deprive women of their constitutional rights in the nation. She has not helped really fund education. She's been willing to go along with Donald Trump to take away the protection against loss of insurance for pre-existing conditions. So I think Iowans are ready for change.
But, Governor, if you look at the state, going back to James' earlier question, this state, some would argue, is trending Republican. Yours seems to be trending Democratic, but ours is rural, it's largely white, most people haven't gone to college, I mean, they're older, and that just describes a Trump voter. So I guess why are you making this effort out here, given that Donald Trump, I understand the Democratic attack on him, but he carried the state by almost 10%. Hillary Clinton did better in Texas than she did here. So isn't Iowa really becoming a Republican state again?
Iowa is a perfect place for us to push back and resist what's going on in the White House. And you know, a lot of people always want to fight the last war. Last war was in the past, and we're in the present. We're in the present where we have an incumbent who has refused to protect Iowa from what Donald Trump is doing. Her opponent, Fred Hubbell, is a guy who wants to help people come together to fix the educational system and give people opportunities and protect their health care. So yes, I think you're going to find a lot of people with buyer's remorse this year. The polling is clear. There is a national movement that is quite spectacular. The Democratic Party has picked up 46 seats, legislative and congressional seats, since the election of Donald Trump, since the largest crowd ever in inaugural history. You won't forget that, that the president told us about. Since the largest inaugural crowd in history, we have flipped 46 seats in the nation. And there's a reason for that. People feel this anxiety that some fundamental American values are at risk. Now, I believe this. I believe his cruelty is going to be defeated by our compassion. I believe that his chaos is going to be defeated by the Constitution, and we're winning. My state's won in several lawsuits. We're going to continue that.
You mentioned the immigration issue. Last year, your state declared itself a sanctuary. You're currently in a state where the legislature and governor have passed a law that will deny state funds to cities and counties that fail to cooperate with immigration officials. What do you say to those Iowans who want immigration laws enforced?
I say that it's a similar situation. My view of my state is that we ought to have a respect for the laws. But unfortunately, the Trump administration has not respected the laws. We have a law right now that you do not separate children from their parents. It's a law of human nature. It's a law of parenthood and grandparenthood. It's a law of common decency. And it's a law and Constitution that these folks have a due process right. So we pushed back and crushed Donald Trump's Muslim ban, and we now have an appropriate lawsuit, as does Iowa under your Democratic Attorney General, that will protect these children and the Constitution. And this has been pretty interesting to me to have seen Republicans, independents, and Democrats alike who have understood how cruel and inhumane this has been. And that voice has succeeded in folding, making sure that Donald Trump folded like a cheap suit. Right now, they have no idea what they're doing. And we have to make sure that we protect basic values. I do believe we will succeed in this. I believe Donald Trump will be a blip in history, because the Constitution will outlast Donald Trump. And by going to court, we're going to make sure that's the case.
James. Governor, the balance of power between the federal government and the states shifts from time to time. Right now, we see a lot of activism on the parts of states like Washington with lawsuits and taking positions that are really in direct opposition to federal policy. A lot of people would look at immigration as sort of the domain of the federal government. Is this an appropriate role for the states to take positions, whether in court or by state law, that are in direct opposition to federal policy?
Very much so, and I'll tell you why I believe this. You know, the Constitution is not self-effectuating. You have to have people who will stand up for it over the decades. You can lose your civil rights, and you can lose them by inaction. I always think of Justice William O. Douglas, who was a Yakima, Washington boy where I used to be in Congress. And he said something that's always stuck with me. You know, when you lose your constitutional rights and your civil rights, that loss doesn't come as a curtain coming down, sudden. It comes in shades of twilight, the slow darkening of an evening until you find yourself in darkness. So we have to protect this. And we have, I think, won as far as almost every single lawsuit we've had with the Trump administration to date. We've been on sound ground because he has been so incompetent. I don't know, not only cruel, but incompetent. These people could not run a two-car funeral. They do not have any clue where these children are. They have no plan to reunite them with their parents. This is a rerun. I've seen this movie before, the Muslim ban, where we had to go to court. They had no idea what they were doing. They caused chaos in airports all over the nation. And that's what happens when you have leaders who don't follow the Constitution or common sense. And unfortunately, and I want to make this point, and it might be a little repetitive, but it's important. Unfortunately, right now, the incumbent governor of Iowa, a tremendously progressive state on science, you led the Green Revolution. You're going to lead the green clean energy revolution if you have a governor who will guard Iowa instead of being Donald Trump's sycophant. And that's what you have in an incumbent right now.
I want to ask you about another policy question, tariffs. What do you make of Trump's policy on tariffs?
I think they are potentially, if not ruinous, very damaging to working people and families in Iowa. And it's not just those people who are on the farm. I sort of come from an agricultural district. I represented a apple and hops and wine making region in central Washington. So agriculture is very important to me. It's very important to my state. We're one of the biggest exporting trade ag exporters in my state, very much like Iowa. So my state and Iowa share the fact that we are much endangered right now by the lack of sophistication, the lack of strategic planning, the lack of common sense in Donald Trump's trade policy. And it has exposed Iowa. The obvious ones are soy and pork and agricultural producers, but that ripples through the economy. You have manufacturing firms here who are now in danger because of increasing prices of aluminum and steel. So this is very dangerous, and I think it's appropriate to have a governor who will speak up for your state when this happens, and you don't have that right now.
But Governor, what about people, Democrats, who agree with Donald Trump, that think other countries have been taking our lunch? You have people in your own party, steelworkers, that like some of these ideas about tariffs. What do you say to those people?
I say that when you're a governor, you ought to stick up for your state. That's what your obligation is to your state. Yes, there's diverse views on that. I understand that. But I believe governors, you have millions of people in your hands. Their livelihood, their families, their health care, they're in your hands. And you have an obligation to stick up for them. You've got an incumbent governor who's sticking up to see how close she can stick to Donald Trump, not to stick up for policies that are going to be extremely damaging to the economy of the state of Iowa. And when I say extremely damaging, again, it's not just people who are just in the agricultural industry. It's the librarians and the teachers who won't be able to pass a school bond issue because the economy is being damaged. It's the light manufacturing industries that are going to be hurt because of their aluminum and steel prices going up. And I have that right now. I was in a boat building company the other day that their prices are going to go up for aluminum. They make the best aluminum boats in the world. But again, this is a rerun of what he did on the Muslim ban, what he did on child separation policies, which is a bull in the china shop who is more interested in just his own sort of narcissistic viewpoint than the interests of people in Iowa. And we need a governor here who will stick up against that. And I'm glad Fred's up to that job.
Governor, Washington is one of a growing number of states that have legalized marijuana, in your case for both medicinal and recreational purposes. How's that working out? What are the social consequences of that? Is the revenue worth the change?
It's a big issue in our state right now.
Yeah, well, let me just share our experience. When this came up, I actually was not supportive of decriminalization at the time. I had some concerns about youthful use and some other issues. I will tell you, however, though, that the concerns of people who opposed decriminalization of marijuana have not been realized. We have not had significant changes in youthful usage. We have not had criminality. We have not had sort of a huge leakage out of our market to other states from the legal market. So I would consider it a very significant success, and the fears that people had have not been realized. It has had a beneficial impact in a variety of ways. It has freed up law enforcement to chase real criminals instead of people dealing with retail marijuana. It has allowed people, the medical marijuana has been very important to a lot of people, including people of senior citizens. It has generated revenue that is helpful in a lot of ways, including in our schools. I would consider it a success. I would recommend it.
From a health standpoint, smoking is smoking. I mean, the gains that have been made in public policy to limit smoking and reduce smoking rates, and now legalizing marijuana, are these things at odds?
No, they really aren't. And we've done extensive surveys about our young people, which is our first priority, obviously, and they understand the difference. We've had some success, although we want to keep on top of it to reduce tobacco and nicotine addiction. Nicotine addiction is one of the most horrific addictions in the world. Marijuana has not proven to have those really, truly addictive properties.
But the health effect of smoking marijuana is damaging.
You know, I would not, the research that I've seen, people who smoke cigarettes have much, much more toxins associated with nicotine than marijuana. So at least my view, that is not a significant concern to mine. But basically, giving people freedom, that's what we've done, and it has been a success. I would recommend it, and I do think the nation will be in this position quite quickly. I think this is moving very quickly.
A lot of people worry that it's a gateway drug.
Have not seen evidence of that.
No evidence.
Just have not seen evidence that. We have an opioid problem like everyone else. We've been one of the best opiate initiatives in the nation to deal with it. We've been very advanced in our efforts to train first responders to deal with this. We've got a really good opiate initiative, but there's really no evidence that marijuana has been a problem in that way.
Microsoft, Amazon, some of the biggest names on the interweb are located in your state. Yet there's still a section of residents in the state of Washington who don't have access to broadband. If you can't do it in Washington, how in the world can the nation do it?
Well, we are doing it, and it's interesting you mention that. I just finished a 3-day tour of my state for the second stage of our broadband access initiative to really get statewide initiative. Let me give you an example. We have a little town called La Push, and it's a tribal reservation. It's the I think it's the westernmost port in the continental United States, very isolated. We just be able to negotiate a way and a combination with some public funds and some utility funds, or excuse me, some of the cable companies to expand broadband to this very isolated village of about 400 people. And we're doing that all across the state of Washington. I did a tour of 7 small towns in my state and looking at the successes we've had. So we actually are making real progress on that to get to the last person at the last remote outpost. And we're using new technology to do it. We just passed a bill that I helped pass this year that allows our port districts to help. So we're engaging some of our municipal corporations, our port districts, our PUDs, and the state in public-private partnerships to get those last miles connected. By the way, you can't overstate how important this is. This is, I believe, the single most important thing we can do for economic development, because if you don't have broadband access, trying to start a small business with access to the international markets, you can't do it. If you're going to have an online college course that's been so successful, it's like not having a textbook. So this is extremely important. I'm proud of what we're doing, and I hope Fred's going to do the same thing. I'm confident of that.
Governor, you've talked a couple times about the importance of clean energy. And I'm wondering, and you've made climate change one of your priorities, and I'm wondering if a candidate for president can win talking about climate change.
You bet, but let me focus on a candidate winning right here in Iowa based on growing clean energy jobs. Fred Hubbell understands that. He's been working in the clean energy space for years. He led
Everybody in Iowa has.
Well, I know, but you know what? You've got a governor who's kind of following in the train of Donald Trump, who's a climate denier, who is doing everything he can to pull the rug out underneath the clean energy economy that's so successful in Iowa. With the renewable fuels effort, look, I got a biofuels refinery that's fed. I visited it last week in Grays Harbor County. It's getting its product from Iowa. You have the wind turbine industry that's going great guns, and he came here and was mocking the wind turbine industry. And you have a governor who puts up with that, doesn't stand up for her state. That's unacceptable to me, and I think it's unacceptable to Iowans. Now, Fred, in contrast, for decades has understood the power of clean energy. He was instrumental in developing this initiative that would protect Iowa water, which is very, very important. And so this is something he understands that, and that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about his candidacy. And he's been growing jobs. This is a job creator, and I think it's important to say this. Climate change is as much an economic opportunity as it is an environmental challenge.
Governor, I got a challenge. I mean, the Republicans are watching this and they're saying, you're just giving an infomercial for Fred Hubbell here, and that in fact
that shouldn't be very surprising.
Well, no, that's your job. But that in fact Republicans in this state have worked hard on wind energy and expanding that. You giving them no credit at all?
No, listen, I'm sure that the Republicans who are building wind turbines, who are building manufacturing plants to build, I'm sure they've done that. But here's the problem. Their vision is being hampered because they have a governor who has not stood up against the man who is, it seems like every morning doing something to damage the growth of the clean energy economy.
She has criticized him in regards to the renewable fuel standard, the
and she is
ethanol
supporting
production.
him, and she is voting for him, and she has not urged her legislators, and she has not opposed. And you know what? She's not running on a platform to get this job done. And if she is doing it, she's spectacularly unsuccessful. We need a guy like Fred Hubbell who's going to stand up for clean energy in Iowa.
We've got about half a minute left. Given the polarization in this country, how do you govern in the United States of America and unite the country?
So I would say one of the steps, because there is just a profound longing for civility and a lack of divisiveness. And I think you start by electing leaders who will be resistant to Donald Trump on this score, because he has sown division and hatred like we've never seen before. You can be confident you will have that in Fred Hubbell. And the other thing about Fred, I was just talking about this as we were driving in this, his demeanor is so dignified and civil. I think he's a perfect guy for the job.
My demeanor has to be bad here because we're out of time. Thank you for being with us, Governor.
Thank you. Don't forget to vote.
Yeah. And we look forward on this show to having your counterpart from the Republican Governors Association come on too.
I appreciate that. They have a lot harder job.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll be back with another edition of Iowa Press next week at our regular times, 7:30 Friday night and noon Sunday on our main IPTV channel, with the rebroadcast Saturday morning at 8:30 on our .3 World channel, and always online at IPTV.org. For all of us here at Iowa Public Television, I'm David Yepsen, and thanks for joining us today.
Funding for Iowa Press was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation, the Associated General Contractors of Iowa, the public's partner in building Iowa's highway, bridge, and municipal utility infrastructure.
I'm a dad.
I am a mom.
I'm a kid.
I'm a kid at heart. I'm a banker.
I'm an Iowa banker.
No matter who you are, there is an Iowa banker who is ready to help you get where you want to go. Iowa Bankers, allowing you to discover the genuine difference of Iowa banks.